Nightfall comes and the claws come out. Here's your look at the DC Collectibles DC Essentials Knightfall Catwoman. DC Essentials is a line of 7-inch action figures based on DC characters with universal appeal, accessible to both longtime collectors and those just starting out, which delivers authentic detail from a company with over 2 decades of experience creating high-quality action figures. Depicted in her popular purple costume from the 90s Knightfall storyline, Gotham City's Feline Fatale is the indispensable anti-hero to pair with the DC Essentials Batman action figure. I think of all the figures from this wave of DC Essentials, the one I was most looking forward to was the 90s Catwoman, just because it's one of my favorite costumes of all time, and for the fact we don't really have a lot of examples. The only one that really stands out to me, at least, is the DC Direct one, also ironically enough from the Knightfall line. I'm very excited for this one. According to the trusty tape measure of mine, you're looking at Catwoman standing 6.6 inches in height, which, yes, if you are paying attention, is a little bit shorter than Batman. Don't worry, we'll do some comparisons. And that, in centimeters, translates to a little under 17 centimeters, 16.9 to be exact. To further prove that, I can bring in the Batman that we already had a look at. And yes, in fact, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. And Selena Kyle. Oh, yeah. Selena Kyle also is smaller than Batman. She's about maybe a head or half a head shorter than Batman, which I think scale-wise works perfectly, though her height has changed in the comics. Around this time frame, I think she would have been just a little bit shorter than Batman. Again, I love the fact that we're getting ourselves 90s costumes. Say what you will about the Essentials line. I'm still loving the Batman. And I think Catwoman's going to be also a home run hit. Can't wait to have a look at her closer. And normally, this would be the next part of the review where we would have a look at the accessories that come included with the figure. And yet again, like the Batman, we have another example of an Essentials figure that comes with squat. She doesn't come with anything. She doesn't come with a whip. A whip of all things would have been the one accessory I would have asked for this particular rendition of Catwoman, and yet she doesn't come with it. She doesn't come with checking off the box, no interchangeable hands, certainly no whip, and no display stand. Again, for this being the Essential line, I love the sculpting on the head portraits so far. But really, they really could have included some much-needed accessories for these figures. Okay, stop talking about that. What we will talk about, though, is the portrait first for Catwoman. I'm digging the design of Catwoman's head portrait. Nice sculpting overall. And not sure if you can see it, but if you look at this corner of her mouth, and you look at this corner of her mouth, she's got herself a bit of a little sneaky smirk. I really like that. I like that they gave her a little bit of a smile. It could have been a little bit more extreme, yes, but at the very least, she does have a little smirk happening, and I like that. The very green eyes, as you can see, are nicely presented with a little bit of reflective light. Also, just pointing it with my finger, you can see in the little corner there of her eye, she's got a little bit of reflective light. Nice job. Panel lining around the eyes is also nicely done, and I'm also liking the eyeshadow that she's got on her eyelid and the sections in between her eyeball and her eyebrow. The noted points also in the opening sections of her eyes are also something that was classic in the original comic design of Catwoman. And overall, really happy with the face portrait. It's pretty. It is really, really pretty. On the back, of course, you got the open section of her cowl, revealing jet black hair like she had in the comics, which would then be shortened. Catwoman would go with a shorter style around the Batman Hush line. I kind of enjoyed the longer hairstyle on Catwoman. The costume purple that they ended up going with, I feel is like one shade lighter than the coloring that it appears in the comics, but still very passable if you ask me. The purpling is quite clean. Most part-wise, I mean, the paint is generally quite clean as well. I'm wondering, though, if some of this is actually plastic. The way that the legs, for example, there's a cut right there where it swivels. I can't help but wonder if this section was actually painted or if this section is actually just plastic and they've attached two types of plastic, one to the other. Although this one feels a little bit more smoother, this feels a little bit more coarser, but maybe the likelihood of this being two types of colored plastic are probably slim to none. It's probably just painted right here. There's paint also here on her fingernails. A small touch, something very much noticed and appreciated, the fact that they would actually put in the silver claws. The thing I did notice, though, about her face, just going back to that, though, for one quick second, while the paint is generally quite clean, I did notice, though, that the airbrushing, I'm guessing they probably airbrushed the flesh onto her face. That sounds gross. But the way that they airbrushed it kind of looks like they probably could have added a second coat, or at the very least added a dividing line right here, because it is awfully faint as it makes its way then into the purple of her cowl. Just a little bit of cleanup, I think, would have been appreciated. I like also the fact that they've sculpted in the sides, what looks to be ears slightly molded on the sides of her cowl. I don't see it as much on this side. Maybe it's my eyes playing tricks on me, but it does look like she's got an outlined section of her ear. A little small detail I appreciate. As I said, there's not really a whole lot of color to be spoken of here. Mostly purples with the accents of the sleeves there done in black. And of course the leggings done here in, I'm trying to remember whether these are actually boots. I would imagine yes, that be the case. Boots also done in black. The one unfortunate thing that this figure misses on is the fact that she doesn't have heels. I suppose if anything it's calling this as a blessing, because if she had had heels she would have been even more difficult to stand. I find actually that the Catwoman has a better time of standing than some of the male characters that we've looked at up to this point. The males are often at times problematic, it seems, for standing, likely due to the way that they use the ankle articulation. Catwoman seems a little bit more simplified, the way that they've attached the feet, and I think it ends up resulting in the figure standing better. She probably could have used better heels, sure, if she wants to look like the comics, but it definitely would have guaranteed that this figure would have had the utmost amount of difficulty when it would have come to standing her. She doesn't also have peg holes on the undersides of her feet, so if you're looking for putting her in dynamic poses, you're pretty much only going to be relegated from like the waist up. Let's have a look at her articulation. Her head rotates back and forth. As you could probably guess it with long-haired figures, so the issue becomes that the hair gets in the way of things. It clears over the shoulders, but it does stop for a second just to kind of visit and say hello to everybody before it continues on the rest of its way. The head moves up and down, and it also rocks back and forth, but by a very limited amount. The shoulders hinge out, way past, or at the very least, 90 degrees, a little bit more than what the male figures seem to be able to pull off. And you can rotate her arms all the way around. She has a swivel at the bicep. She has a double hinge on the elbow, so if she wants to cover her face, she can certainly do that. Not sure why she would want to. You got a pretty face, Catwoman. Don't hide it. Hands rotate all the way around and hinge back and forth. Again, no additional hands that this figure comes included with. Bit disappointed by that. She has an upper torso ball joint. Quite generous with the amount that you can actually pull off here. The same thing can really be said for her legs. They give you full splits. You can move forward on the back or forward on the legs. You can also move back. But they, again, stop at the molded butt that they've sculpted on the back of the figure. That's as far back as the legs will go. She has a swivel on about 1/2 to 3/4 of a cut of a thigh. She has a double hinge on the knee. A swivel at the boot. I'm not really sure why you would need that, but I guess it does help to hinge the ankle outward. And then she also has ankle articulation, which allows the feet to move back and forth slightly, but more so up and down. Again, I think they've changed the type of articulation for the female's ankles, and maybe this is probably something that the males could take note in and follow suit. If it does mean that the figures stand a little bit better, I find Catwoman does stand a lot better than Batman. Maybe, again, this is something that they could incorporate to the male figures as well. I mean, again, If you're going to have a figure where down the road, and this has certainly happened a lot of times with the figures that I have in my collection, the DC Essential figures are very prone to having weak ankles over the period of time that you have them in your collection. Catwoman, I don't feel, is going to have that much of an issue because it seems like her ankles are a little bit different than, again, some of the other male figures that we've gotten up to this point. This is indeed a nice looking Catwoman, but the question I pose myself is, does it replace the DC Direct standalone Knightfall Catwoman, which I consider still to be one of my top 10 favorite figures of all time? The answer I would give myself if I asked myself that question would be no. Still, I have an endearing love for that one. There's something about the portrait and just how well that figure comes together. It's very limited on articulation, and I've already had one leg break because the peg that they use for the leg is so soft, but I still have love for that one, and I don't think that's going to be changed anytime soon. There's nothing necessarily wrong with this Catwoman, and certainly for an Essentials version of Catwoman, she checks off all the positive boxes. She's got a very pretty head sculpt. She, of course, is sporting that 90s classic costume, which I love. And she does have really clean looking paint. Even though technically around her face, I think that the area around her mouth probably could have been maybe using one more additional coat of paint. It looks a little too airbrushed around the edges, but that's a small minor nitpick for really a decent looking Catwoman. Proportionately, she may not look realistic in her proportions, but she certainly does look like her comic counterpart. And to the credit of Catwoman, above the male figures that we've already had a look at least this one has no issues standing so far. And judging by the kind of peg that they used for Catwoman, I don't think she's going to be giving me any difficult time standing in the immediate future. Fortunately, though, she doesn't come with a whip. A Catwoman without a whip seems so vacant to me. She really could have included one, and most definitely she could have included some interchangeable hands and maybe a display stand. I know I keep going on about that, but if you're going to be, again, calling this the essential figure, if you really want this to be a definitive Catwoman, she really, at the very least, could have come included with her whip. Let me know down below, guys. Weigh in your thoughts, what you think down below of the new DC Essentials Knightfall Catwoman. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out. Also, if you guys are interested in checking out some more of the DC Essentials, you can either go back and have a look at the ones I've had a look at up to this point, or you can keep your peepers peeled, because we're still going to be having a look at Sinestro, and we're still going to be having a look at Green Lantern in some upcoming videos. Also, if you guys are new to this channel, and you're liking this guy's content, thank you for that, by the way. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification so that when new videos are coming onto this channel, you'll get those friendly reminders. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.